If you ask 10,000 people what color hyperlinks are, I'm sure you would get the same answer each time. In life, there are certain constants. The sun rises and sets, there will never be a full bag of chips, and death will come for us all. And hyperlinks are always blue. Well, except at one time Google changed it, then changed it back. But still, have you ever wondered why hyperlinks were blue to begin with? Not any other color like red or green? I mean, there must be a reason.
What? You gonna tell me you never pondered that?
In today's technological age, we kinda just look at elements on a screen and accept it. Almost like how we accept rocks in nature or fish in the sea. I mean, do we ever question why these things are the way they are? Well, most people don't because there are better things to do with your time, like, I don't know, playing pickleball or buying houses. But spending my waking hours going down random internet rabbit holes is my specialty. So come with me as we dive into why hyperlinks are blue. Before we talk about why blue, we need to first ask why hyperlinks? As in, we need to talk about hyperlinks and hypertext. Hypertext, according to the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN,
I am a scientist. It's so cool.
is text that is not constrained to be linear, basically meaning text that contains links to other text. The actual link which connects them is called a hyperlink. You might think that the starting point of these concepts would be the creation of the internet, but we actually have to go back much, much further than that. It all boils down to the human desire to organize and compile things. As more information is aggregated, you want to connect the pieces of information that are related. For example, references in documents can be seen as a precursor to hypertext, because specific text in a book can have the purpose of linking you to another book. This concept of linking information has been raised throughout history, from the Ramayana between 700 and 400 BCE to the Atlantic article As We May Think by Vannevar Bush in 1945, in which he details the Memex, a hypothetical device that could store all books, communications, and records. Sound familiar? The only thing Vannevar Bush didn't think of are the LED lights. In 1960, the first hypertext project, known as Project Xanadu, was created by Ted Nelson, where he actually coined the terms hypertext and hypermedia. In essence, it was the first project to connect two pages of information together instantaneously. Here, links between pages were visually represented by actual lines on the display. However, this was more of a vision, and implementations would come much later. Fun fact, he was actually inspired by that very same Atlantic article As We May Think that I mentioned earlier. Ted Nelson would then co-design the hypertext editing system in 1967 at Brown University, where it became the first working example of a hypertext system on commercial equipment, using a link pen for interaction. It was actually sold to NASA to create documentation for the Apollo space program. Alongside that project was the Online System, or NLS, by Douglas Engelbart at Stanford, a computer collaboration system which, in a famous presentation now called the Mother of All Demos, Doug himself showcased not only hypertext, but the prototype of a small piece of tech known as the mouse. With these early systems, using pens or mice then evoking a command with a keyboard was the way to interact with things. We then moved to the Hypertext system in 1983, an early hypertext system on IBM PC computers which introduced color, cyan, to a black screen. Following that, there's Windows 1 in 1985, which brought a full color graphic interface, although links and buttons were still black. Still, the dark blue we're familiar with was used for other elements. However, that's only half of the pie, because Windows 1 also had one of the earliest examples of using underlining to denote interactivity, as well as a hover state. Those paradigms would continue with varying inspirations in 1987 with the HyperCard by Apple for Macintosh, as well as in 1990 with the iconic World Wide Web, the first ever web browser created by Tim Berners-Lee while at CERN. By the way, World Wide Web was a browser, not the actual, World Wide Web. Although he did also create that too, along with URLs, HTML, and HTTP. He had originally experimented with hypertext in 1980 with Inquire, a software project to organize people and software models. He just wanted a way for physicists across the globe to share research, and was frustrated by the inefficiencies of storing data across multiple different machines. Maybe there was a way to combine the nascent internet with hypertext. Who knows where those possibilities could lead to. Meanwhile, displays would get more advanced in what colors they could depict, leaving the whites and blacks of earlier systems. Greens and, you guessed it, blues became more popular in a plethora of systems. Blues in particular became more popular colors for interaction, as seen in the HyperCard in 1991 and Windows 3.1 in 1992. However, the most well-known example that is often credited with introducing the blue links to the world was Mosaic, a graphical browser created at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign by developers Mark Andreessen and Eric Bina, and released in 1993. Mosaic was a pretty big deal. It pretty much was the killer app for the internet as a whole, and is a huge part in why the web became popular in the first place, with thousands of websites popping up in less than a year. I mean, it was super easy to use, and it had everything, like inline images and forums. Look, it was a different time, okay? However, that's not all. According to its changelog, it is revealed that they changed default anchor representation. Blue and single solid underline for unvisited, dark blue and single dashed underline for visited. Bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
And so the blue link would pop up in more and more future interfaces until it became quite well established by the mid-90s. But why blue of all colors? Particularly all 256 of them in the early days? Well, for Mosaic, in an interview, original developer Mark Andreessen put it quite simply.
I think you're the guy to ask about this. Why are hyperlinks blue?
Because I like blue.
Is that why?
Yes. It's a nice, firm color. It's easy to see.
So what's the story here? You're sitting in an office.
Well, it had to be some color.
He also mentioned that it had to be something that stood out on the page, like blue, red, purple, or green, and I didn't like those other colors. Funnily enough, he also talked about disliking white backgrounds and opted for gray backgrounds instead. I see you, Mark, a fellow dark mode enjoyer. Well, what does the father of the web have to say about this? According to Tim Berners-Lee, when he made the first website on Next, he didn't really give it much thought. In an interview with W3.org, he said, "There is no reason why one should use color or blue to signify links. It is just a default. Blue came in as browsers went color. I don't remember which was the first to use blue. In fact, he preferred the color green, and said I used green whenever I could in the early www design for nature and because it is supposed to be relaxing. My guess is that blue is the darkest color and so threatens the legibility the least." Indeed, as color monitors became more popular and more advanced, different kinds of hues were experimented with. Colors like black were already used extensively, and colors like red already had existing meanings, like alert.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Blue was relatively unused, so people wouldn't confuse hyperlinks for another function. Plus, blue is one of those colors that is most recognizable to those without color blindness and those with red-green color blindness. Another reason for blue's ubiquitousness was probably with Mosaic's popularity itself. Maybe a bunch of software engineers took a liking to that blue color after Mosaic's massive success and decided to take some inspiration. So was the blue just a happy accident, an arbitrary decision that defined the age of information?
No, I'm afraid I just blew myself.
Are hyperlinks blue because they are frickin' blue? Well, like most things in history, it's not exactly that cut and dry. In the Mozilla blog Revisiting Why Hyperlinks Are Blue by Elise Blanchard, she was able to connect with Professor Ben Schneiderman, who in the 1980s worked at the University of Maryland, doing research on hypertext at the time. She did this with the help of a commenter, and as we all know, the comment sections are where real intellectual discourse happens. By the way, I highly recommend reading both parts of the Mozilla blog, link in the description. It reveals a lot of cool things about early internet history. Anyways, Ben Schneiderman revealed that he experimented with many different colors, along with many of his graduate students, the blue color being implemented by his student Dan Ostroff. He noted that red highlighting made the links more visible, but reduced the user's capacity to read and retain the content of the text. Blue was visible on both white and black backgrounds and didn't interfere with retention. Then, after research had ended at the University of Maryland, bluish links were incorporated into hyperties, which we mentioned earlier. Schneiderman would go on to present their findings in industry papers like the Communications of the ACM, as well as the first hypertext conference in Chapel Hill, North Carolina in 1987. Yes, there was a conference around hypertext, and it's one of the oldest international conferences for human-computer interaction and information systems. It's actually still running today. Of the conference, Schneiderman would later write, "We conducted approximately 20 empirical studies of many design variables which were reported at the Hypertext 1987 conference and in an array of journals and books. Issues such as the use of light blue highlighting as the default color for links, the inclusion of a history stack, easy access to a back button, article length, and global string search were all studied empirically." So tons of research was already being done on what the color for hyperlinks should be. Still, how does that leap to Tim Berners-Lee and Marc Andreessen, the ones to create the World Wide Web and popularize blue links to the public respectively? Well, funnily enough, Tim Berners-Lee did in fact reference the research being done in a proposal to CERN about a global hypertext system. In it, he says an increasing amount of work is being done into hypermedia research at universities and commercial research labs, and some commercial systems have resulted. There have been 2 conferences, Hypertext 87 and 88, and in Washington, D.C., the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, hosted a workshop on standardization in hypertext, a follow-up of which will occur during 1990. Remember that hypertext conference we mentioned earlier? There's a very good chance that he heard about the findings from it. He even mentions being aware of hypermedia research at universities.
Coincidence? I think not!
Still not convinced? Tim Berners-Lee also cited Schneiderman's work in the ACM. Plus, remember that workshop he mentioned? There was an early effort to standardize hypertext through a 3-day workshop hosted by the NIST in 1990. And guess who decided to show up? Mr. Tim Berners-Lee. Although color wasn't really discussed, readability was a research objective, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that someone mentioned a certain azure tint. In a follow-up paper by Richard Furuta and P. David Stotts, they discussed the importance of color, saying dynamic representation of context may also be useful. For example, consider the representation of an anchor that changes over time. The anchor may be represented by a highlighted region whose color, size, or location changes over time to draw more attention to itself. Alternatively, the anchor might be represented by a small animation. They were referring to the importance of different states for links, like active or visited states. If we take a look at the dates again, after the research, workshops, and papers, we start to see a shift towards blue for interaction in the early 1990s. Now, what about Marc Andreessen? I mean, he is the one often credited with being the first one to introduce the blue hyperlink to the masses and helped establish an industry standard. I thought he chose blue because he liked blue. That honestly could still be true. Look, I'm not saying he's lying or anything, but it could also be true that maybe he had a whiff of the findings from these papers or conferences. After all, he was inspired to develop Mosaic after being shown in another browser, Viola www, by a colleague, so he's obviously open to influence and dialogue. Was the idea to make a blue hyperlink the result of some Inception-esque dream infiltration scheme? Maybe he heard it on a random commute or something. Or his coworker stopped by his cubicle to talk about his weekend and had a cool new thing to share. In all honesty, it could be anything. Maybe he did just pick blue because he liked blue, blissfully unaware of the research that was going on. The purpose of this story isn't to definitively find who thought of blue hyperlinks first, but more so to show that innovation isn't always a eureka or an aha moment, but instead the result of a lot of people asking the same question. It sort of reminds me of pizza margherita, a Neapolitan dish that was said to be the invention of an Italian chef in the late 1880s to honor Queen Margherita. The pizza was topped with basil, mozzarella, and tomatoes, green, white, and red, the colors of the newly unified Italian nation. Yeah, it turns out pizzas with those toppings were being made all the time in the century before. Thank you, Max Miller. It's a long, messy path of evolution that combines both initiative and research, and we have our underpaid and eternally hungry grad or PhD students to thank for that.
No food for you grad students till you grade 3,000 papers.
You'll get that pizza party soon. And so blue began to be the dominant color of hyperlinks, from the Mosaic all the way to pretty much every browser today. A simple question of connecting two documents now defines the way we interact with technology and information in the modern era. Something that seems so obvious and natural to us actually required a lot of conferences, papers, workshops, and some good old-fashioned experimentation to come into being. Isn't computer history fascinating? Ah, what a simpler time. Before the... Speaking of history, I have a lot of other videos on my channel about designer computer history, so check out my playlist here. And as always, this is Emil the UX Lizard. Got any ideas for future videos? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, like and subscribe. Till the next one, computer historians.